So it's been a few days since the browser company officially launched its first AI browser called Deer. I've had a few days to play around with it and I'm seriously impressed. In this video, I want to explain why and to share some hands-on use cases that you can use at work for things like market research, accessibility checks, and more. And as always, if you enjoy the channel, hit the subscribe and the like button. So last week, I installed the beta version of the browser company's new product, Deer. And as someone who's never really managed to click with their previous browser, Arc, despite trying very hard, I was a little bit skeptical. But just a few days later, I'm pretty much now sold on this concept of AI browsers and find myself using the AI features far more than I had imagined. Using an AI browser has pretty much transformed how I interact with many of the pages that I visit, and I've realized that when you give your browser contextual awareness, it suddenly opens up a whole new bunch of ways to use a browser that I hadn't really considered before. Now, as well as Deer, Perplexity is working on its own upcoming AI browser, Comet. Chrome is gradually adding more AI features, and Opera has launched an AI browser of its own too. So before we take a look at some of the ways you can use these browsers, let's first get a snapshot of some of the core technologies that are used in these browsers and why they have the potential to transform how we use the web. So here's a snapshot of some of the core technologies that are used in an AI browser. And the first thing you notice is this concept of contextual awareness. Now, contextual awareness is at the heart of these AI browsers, and just a few days ago, Perplexity's CEO made reference to this in relation to their upcoming new browser with a simple tweet that read, "Context is all you need." In AI browsers, contextual awareness refers to the information that the browser has access to that will allow users to transform everyday workflows. So, for example, this means that you can ask AI browsers to reference multiple tabs at the same time when performing some analysis, or reference a set of brand guidelines when crafting a release note or an email about an upcoming feature. Contextually aware browsers use a combination of multiple sources like open tabs, cookies, APIs, and the DOM, or the document object model. So in a sense, they can see the pages that you view, and with permission, they will use locally stored browsing histories to personalize your experience. On-device machine learning helps the browser learn from your behaviors and fine-tune the user experience by suggesting relevant websites based on your previous behaviors. And the final piece of the puzzle is access to AI models, typically in the side panel, which users can interact with and chat with. And in many cases, these include a combination of proprietary models built upon the likes of OpenAI, Gemini, Meta, and so on. Deer CEO says that its AI models will become more personalized over time, and says that with every tab that you open, it should feel like this AI model is getting more and more personalized to you, so that at the end of a week of browsing, a month of browsing, let alone a year, it's going to know you as well as your closest friends or colleagues. Now, that does sound a little bit disturbing. So long as most of the processing takes place in the browser, it's a trade-off that many users may be willing to make. So let's take a look at some use cases that you can put into practice if you're interested in AI browsers. First up is the example of conducting market research. We can use the browser's ability to reference tabs to create a comparison between two different products. So in this example, I've got two windows open. The first is for Intercom and the second is for Decagon. And we're going to imagine that we are working at Zendesk and we want to conduct a comparison of these two products. So in our AI browser, we can simply reference both of these windows and ask it to create a comparison table. So all I do is I say create a table outlining the core features of these two products. And then since the browser is contextually aware, it will use both of those tabs to create the table that we've asked it to do. So this gives us a nice overview of the different features on offer by each of these two different companies. And if we wanted to, we could then take it a step further by asking it to reference our own product, in this case Zendesk, to give us an understanding of how each of these products compare and to identify any potential opportunities for feature differentiation. Deer also comes with this power called skills. So skills essentially allow you to quickly run prompts that you pre-program and then run them whenever you need them. So in this example, I'm going to create a prompt that asks the browser to search Reddit for threads on a specific topic relevant to my product and to find problems, solutions, and upvoted comments. So if I go ahead and save that in the browser, with this skill now created, I can invoke it whenever I want to for any industry. So in this example, you can see how I can use this for industries like pet insurance or for SaaS customer service products. And within a few seconds, you'll get an up-to-date view of what users are saying on Reddit about your industry just by using the keyword in your browser. So that's a really powerful way of using the skills feature. I can also take this a step further as part of my competitor analysis, and I can create a skill that asks Deer to find all recent appearances of competitors' leadership teams. So let's say I want to keep on top of what kinds of marketing competitors are doing through podcast appearances and so on. I can create a skill that is called Comp Pod, and I can ask it to find any podcast appearances from my competitors. And I can either hard code my competitors in there, or I could leave that flexible so that I can use that as part of my query, and then tell the skill which competitors to focus on. So that's a really handy way of doing competitor analysis as well. You can also use this for things like accessibility checks. So in this example, I'm going to visit a website that outlines accessibility checks that designers might want to refer to, and then ask the browser to cross-check this against the UI that I upload. So in this case, I'm going to upload a snippet from Apple's new Divisive Liquid Glass on Apple Music, and I'm going to see if it passes the criteria outlined. All I need to do is simply open up a new tab, and then in that tab, ask it to reference the checklist and say, does this UI attached meet the accessibility criteria that is outlined in this document? And as you can see, unfortunately for Apple, that UI has failed the test. But you can imagine that this is super helpful for any instances really where you've got multiple windows open and you want to cross-reference information from one tab into another. So for example, let's say you're in Linear or you're in Jira, and you want to get a snapshot of some of the user stories that are currently in development and then use that information into an email. You can do just that by referencing the tab and then pasting that information directly into an email. So it makes things like status updates really easy as well. And the final use case that I wanted to show was the ability to create your own personal industry news or research digest. So in this example, you might want to keep on top of industry news in your category. Or if you're interested in keeping up to date with the latest AI research, you could create a skill that asks Dear to find the most recent and interesting AI research that is specifically focused on your area. So this skill asks Dear to summarize the main findings, the authors and research groups involved, and the potential impact of each study. But I can also specify how I want the format to look. So I can say I want a list of new studies with a header and 2 to 3 bullet points underneath, along with the links to the studies. And I can make this customizable by saying, allow me to specify the focus area using the keyword query. So let's say, for example, I want to focus specifically on AI research relating to social media. All I need to do to invoke this is to use the res keyword and then type in social media, and the browser will do the rest. The browser will then go and find all of the relevant AI research linked to social media. So I've got examples here from a new paper published by researchers at UCLA, which talks about content dissemination and regulation in multi-agent simulations. And because Dear comes with the ability to chat, I can then open up the chat side panel and begin to ask questions or get a summary of this specific research model, which is really helpful. So as you know, I'm not really one for hyperbolic, overdramatic hype for the sake of it. But based on my couple of days' experience working with this browser, I'm seriously impressed, and I really do think that this will transform the way we use browsers. And now I'm really just looking forward to seeing what Perplexity and other companies cook up. If you're interested in digging into some other use cases for how to use this AI browser at work, then head over to Substack, where I cover more use cases, including things like writing PRDs and understanding your technical documentation and analyzing spreadsheets from multiple data sources. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.